This is the Persistence of Vision podcast. Hi, welcome to Persistence of Vision. I'm Clint Till, and in every episode, I talk to creative professionals in film and video production. I hear a little bit about their career experiences and the lessons they've learned along the way, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to share our own mistakes and all the things that went wrong and what we learned from it so you can avoid the same mistakes we've made. With me in this episode is someone that I've known for several years now, probably, going on 10 years.
Ooh.
Kate DeSessions, who is a writer and producer, also an actor. She and I have actually met at church when I
Yes.
first came to town. So, Kate, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
You meet people, you have an impression of those people.
Uh-huh.
And then when I saw you in the context of being on camera and acting and being involved in the film scene, it was like a moment of, oh, hey, whoa. There's this
Yeah.
whole other side to you that I didn't know at first, which was cool because then we had this commonality of these shared experiences that we
Mhm.
could kind of talk about.
Yes. So I am a producer and writer with Chestnut Tree Films and associated with Enchanted Productions. We are currently working on 6 different films of different genres. We have a thriller, a horror. We have Christmas, of course. That is our big thing right now with Enchanted Valley Productions is Christmas. So I do, when I introduce myself, I am more of a producer of Christmas movies.
Right now, are you primarily focused more on the writer-producer side, or are you still balancing that with your acting pursuits?
I am focusing more on producing and writing, because I really like writing and I really like producing.
Yeah, yeah. So I feel the same way because I've been doing this for 20 plus years and
Mhm.
I did acting, um, mainly theater, nothing in
Yeah.
front of the camera really, but I'm definitely more comfortable behind the camera,
Oh, yeah.
directing, shooting, writing. But I think so much of that experience in acting and studying that really helps to inform the other side of things, really it helped me anyway to inform how I write, how I can relate to actors, talk to actors, direct, that sort of thing. And I mean, have you found that to be true as well? Kind of taking one experience and helping it to inform the other?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Getting my start in acting really has helped me, when I have directed my own films, um, because I know how to talk to them. I know how they felt. I know how hard it is sometimes to connect to a character, how hard it is to bring those emotions out. So, one of the things that I've been learning is how to bring out those emotions in other people. So, not just saying, "Hey, I need you to cry here." I try to connect people with a specific feeling. So it's finding a moment, like being scared. Don't just be scared. Find that moment, that terrified you.
I definitely think if you were directing me right now and you needed me to be scared, all you need to say for future reference is, Clint, think about Unsolved Mysteries with Robert Stack. And then I'm in the fear zone at that
Yes.
moment. You got me. So let's back up a little bit. I want to hear a little bit about you first getting into this interest of filmmaking as an actor, and then getting into this writer producer role.
Well, actually, I started acting in middle school. It was my first experience with a play. I had the most amazing 6th grade teacher. Her name was Mrs. Vaughn, and I was lucky enough to be in her class, and we put on 4 plays, and it was the most amazing experience, and I loved bringing those plays to life. College is when I had my first, I guess, grown-up version of theater on stage, and, it was a very wonderful experience. Just that bonding experience with people that I didn't know, and by the end of it, we were all friends.
There's nothing quite like theater and public speaking and performing or getting up in front of people that help you in all aspects of life that people don't really understand unless they've done it. And,
Right.
I had a really influential high school theater teacher, and I've even today remember one time she was critiquing my performance in a rehearsal, and I was trying to defend my choices. Well, this is why I did it, or this is what happened, and she just stopped me right. She shut. I mean, she was very blunt. She just, Clint, shut up. She said, just take the note and make the correction. And it was very simple, and I've always remembered that, even when I'm producing something for a client or producing something that others have to approve. Sometimes you have to take the note, and
Yeah,
you have to just take the note, make the correction, and move on. So yeah, I mean, I think theater's invaluable to experience to have.
definitely.
Was there anything that stuck out to you then that something that you took with you that kind of has affected you in some way in your life and career now that was maybe a lesson learned or a wonderful insight gained?
Okay, so I did background on, several of the TV shows and movies that would come here to Memphis. I was a background in, Sun Records, and I remember being on set in the Wranglers den where they keep all the background people, and, they made a point to call us background and not extras, and that actually helped my mindset when I'm casting, when I'm writing, because I don't think of people as just, "Oh, just they're just extra." They can just, their part doesn't matter. Their background. So that means that their part matters, that they enhance your scene. As you're writing, think about your background and how you want it to look. And so that is one part that has always stuck with me, and I've just kept it in my head as I write, as I direct, as I produce.
And it's funny how sometimes you notice when background is goes bad, goes wrong, like
You
because I've seen films, TV shows where like you notice the background at a restaurant and you're really not supposed to because somebody's really overacting. There was a scene in Modern Family. It was a restaurant scene, and if you watch carefully, there's a background actor talking to no one at her table. It's just her at a table by herself, and she is talking very friendly, but no one's there. I started working on sets when I was 16, and there's something to be said about just observing how things work, and observing just what people call pieces of gear and kind of the vernacular and things and just how to just conduct yourself overall that you pick up on just by watching.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I'm still learning. Somebody will say something, I'm like, "I think I need to write that down and look that up later."
Yeah, because depending on where you are in the country, certain crew are going to call certain things a certain way that somebody on
Yes,
the West Coast is not.
exactly.
You've done some acting now.
And
You've
then
gotten some experience. You're taking some classes. And sometimes you kind of just pass people here and there. I might run into you at a film festival. I might see you on Facebook. And all of a sudden, it seemed like out of nowhere, you're making Christmas movies, Christmas features. And I'm like, where did this come from and what is going on? So, how did the Christmas specific feature genre come into your life?
okay. I, directed my very first short film, wrote and directed, Shattered, and it was accepted into the Memphis Film Prize. During that time, I was also, I had hosted a kinda like a podcast, like a webcast, called On the Scene, and one of the people that I interviewed was Taimika Shambliss, and we kinda became friends, and we both got into the top 10 of the Memphis Film Prize. Her film was called Timothy, and one of the people that had filmed Timothy was Elgin Cahill. Elgin is a producer, filmmaker, editor from Denver, Colorado, and he was complaining to me, writing this Christmas movie. for his agent, and his agent kept sending it back and as saying, "I need to rewrite this. I need you to rewrite this. I need you to change this." And he was so frustrated. He was like, "I don't know what else to do." And I said, "Well, you're a filmmaker. Why don't you just make it yourself?" And it never occurred to him to actually make Christmas movies himself. He had no good answer to it. So it was at that point that we started talking about creating Christmas movies and the popularity of Christmas movies and the genre and the need for it and the demand for Christmas movies, and we realized that this is something that we could do. So we wrote, and we came up with the story for Colorado Christmas. He wrote it, and I added some stuff in, and we just sent it back and forth a couple times, and then we decided to film it. And so that was the very first Christmas movie that we filmed, and it was up in Colorado. I got to be up there with Ace Young and Diana DeGarmo. Oh my gosh. I was so excited. They're both American Idol, finalists, but it was great, and, we also worked with the wonderful Paul Anthony McLean. That was a great experience for me because that was the first set that was extremely professional with, named actors that I had been a part of the crew. And I was the script supervisor on the set of Colorado Christmas. For most of the features that were filmed in Colorado, I'm just I've just been a writer. But for the one filmed here in Memphis, that one is my baby. A Merry Little Christmas was written by me, and I produced it. Ooh, I was everything,
Mhm.
which is exhausting, as you know. For a short film, it can be very tedious, but for a feature, it involves a whole lot of just everything coming at you at once. So I've done 2 short films previously, and I learned the importance of pre-production. And I will tell anybody this: pre-production is your best friend. When you're doing pre-production for a feature film, the one thing you have to keep in mind is distribution. So, distributors have a list of things that are called deliverables, and you have to deliver those in order for them to sell the movie to other people. And so as you're doing pre-production, you have to have the contracts. They want you to have insurance. They want you to have copyrights. They want you to have all of these different things. And if you start that in the pre-production phase, it won't be so difficult in post-production when you're trying to get everything wrapped up.
And are you learning all of this kinda as you go, or are you consulting with others, or you have a mentor, or, how are you working on all of this, figuring all of this out?
Well, a lot of this I'm doing on my own. A lot of things that I did in my short films, I'm like, "You know what? I need to do this better." And so that's how I learned with my short films. However, with feature films, my mentor is Elgin Cahill, and he has taught me a lot. He even taught me how to use a camera, which is not my forte, but I know how to use a camera.
I mean, anybody that's worked in any film-related venture that's independent knows the struggle of time, money, resources. So, take me through some of these Christmas features for those that are unfamiliar and kind of give us an overview of what we're talking about in terms of not specific numbers, but just generally speaking,
Mhm.
budgets you're dealing with, challenges that come up as a result of that, and maybe creative solutions that you found over the course of doing this, creative solutions to some of these problems as they crop up.
One of the biggest things that we've had to deal with is finding investors. That is one of the hardest things in the world. We have had to self-finance, I think, all but one of our Christmas movies. So we definitely have to stick to a budget, which also goes back to pre-production. So you have to stay within budget, and in doing so, you have to plan everything out. So your actors, um, how much are you gonna pay them? So if you have, say, a B-list actor on your roster, get ready to pay upwards of 50, 60, $70,000 just for them. As you're casting, you also have to think about, is this where I want my money to go? Is this the right person? Even if they cost this much, is this the right person to bring this story to life? One of the things that I've learned on set about pre-planning and pre-production and creating your call sheets is that you're going to need more time for hair and makeup. So I thought I had put in enough time for hair and makeup on all of my sets. Well, I did for some because some of them didn't require much, but are more involved scenes. I should have hired more than one hair and makeup because it seems like we were ready to roll and we were waiting on hair and makeup. We were waiting, this person was done, this person was done. Oh, but that person hadn't gotten in the chair yet. A lot of times, even though we were ready to film one scene, if someone still hadn't gotten their hair and makeup done, we would quickly switch to another scene where everyone who was already had their hair and makeup finished, we could go ahead and film those scenes without the person who was missing. So that's one thing that I've learned is it's kind of like you pivot
Right.
on set. You have to like quickly make a decision. Okay, we're gonna run late on time. What can we do while they're getting ready? What can we do while we're, being held up? Another lesson I've learned is to have a dedicated wardrobe person because as a producer, I was doing everything. I was trying to, make sure everyone had their checks. I was trying to make sure that everybody was, had hair and makeup done. I was trying to make sure that we had enough Christmas decorations up. And I did not have anyone check the wardrobe of our background. And that is something that I should have checked because there were some with some inappropriate clothes, and I didn't catch it until they had already filmed several scenes. And I'm like, why is that person wearing that? Why didn't we cover that up? They're like, well, nobody checked. And I was like, oh, why didn't I check? Why didn't I take the time to do that? So that is another lesson that I've learned. Hair and makeup, wardrobe.
But I would imagine that all of these choices and these things that you've had to do for A Merry Little Christmas comes down to budget, right? When you're
Oh,
talking
yeah.
about all the things that you've had to take on yourself.
Oh, yeah. I made sure that everybody got paid, except for me and Elgin and, a couple of our other crew members from Colorado who work on spec. That is part of trying to keep the budget down. If you keep your cast and crew paid and fed, then it's gonna be a good set to work on. And I don't know how we did it, but we filmed that feature film, A Merry Little Christmas, in 7 days.
How many pages was the script?
The script was 93?
That is
93
that is
pages.
that is an insane schedule.
Well, see, I was smart when I wrote it because a lot of the scenes, happen in one place. So there was only one location where we needed it for 2 days, and that was our biggest location. That was the storefront, and we actually ended up turning a empty store over here in Bartlett into an antique store, and you'd never guess that it was empty, and then it's not actually a store whenever you see the the film because everybody did such an amazing job. So I wasn't there when they set it up because I actually had to work. And then when I got there after I got off work, my jaw dropped and I almost started crying because I was like, this is better. This isn't what I wanted, but this is better than what I wanted. And that's something that you have to deal with on set. Is it may not be exactly what you want. It could be better.
Yeah, there's a level of trust you have to have in the people
Yes.
that you have around you to let them do their job and just kind of give them a little bit of guidance and just kind of let them work, do their thing. Yeah.
Yes.
When you were saying earlier about how you guys were able to pivot so quickly when maybe someone wasn't quite ready in hair
Mhm.
and makeup, you're able to pivot. It reminded me of just the great book by Carl Gottlieb, The Jaws Log. And, Carl Gottlieb was the screenwriter on Jaws.
Yeah.
And he almost wrote this, very soon after the film was made, he wrote this account of how they made the movie. And because of all the legendary issues with the shark, not, and I'm not even talking about before the mechanical issues once it was on set, but the shark was even late getting built and getting to their location in New England.
Yep.
So talk about pivoting, like Spielberg had to completely kind of rework his schedule to film everything he could possibly think of in the town
Mhm.
first before they could even get out on the water.
Yeah.
So, and I just love a good behind the scenes story. I'm a sucker for anything that talks about the making of a movie or some sort of
Mhm.
chaos behind the scenes that where people have to overcome something.
Yeah,
Um,
that's and again, that's something that I'm still learning. I'm learning how to pivot because there were times on my short films that I would just sit there and wait. I didn't know what to do, and I would just sit there and wait and wait and wait. And that is just something that you have to experience and you have to learn from. And even if you experience it, some people will just continue to do the same things and they won't learn from it. The key is you gotta learn from it. You gotta learn how to do it. You gotta think on your feet. So again, like with the store, I had it in my head that it was gonna be filmed a certain way, that it was gonna be filmed, in this one corner. Well, the way they set it up, it was the cameras were kind of set up like a studio. Like we were actually filming inside of a soundstage.
yeah.
And that's how they set it up, and it wasn't what I had in my head, but like I said, it was better, and having to block that instead of the way that I had it in my head it was a little difficult, but we ended up doing it.
Well, it sounds like, of course, I wasn't there, but it sounds like by the way you're describing it, that it almost would offer you a little bit more freedom in the way you could block it if they set it up more like a soundstage than confining yourself to one corner of the space.
Yes, it did, so it was good in that regard, but there are also certain angles that I wish we'd been able to get, but we couldn't because one side was beautiful, but if you had gotten you had the camera angle from this other side, then you would have seen chairs strewn everywhere and cords hanging from the ceiling and all sorts of stuff.
That rem that reminds me of a great story I heard about Akira Kurosawa once, where probably when someone sees your film, they're going to make some sort of artistic interpretation about the way you composed a shot in the store. And the same thing happened with Kurosawa. I'm going to butcher this story, but to paraphrase, someone asked him about the way he had composed a certain shot in one of his films and what the deeper meaning was in that striking composition. And Kurosawa said, "Well, if I'd moved the camera over this way, I would have seen the airport. And if I'd moved the camera over here on the other side, I would have seen this factory." So, and and so it's funny because I mean, just kind of like you have these guardrails sometimes when you're in this business, this field, and sometimes there's nothing more artistic. There's no more artistic intention behind some choices that we make other than, hey, I would have seen a bunch of cables over here if I'd pointed the camera this way, so I'm going to put it over here instead.
Exactly.
So I guess the next question is, are you sick of Christmas yet?
I'm getting there. But no, I I love Christmas, which is why I do this. I love Christmas movies. I loved watching them, and so when Elgin and I were talking about this, I'm like, "This is something that I absolutely can do. I know I can do this." And lo and behold, I'm doing it.
There's a great behind the scenes story about how Arnold Schwarzenegger directed a made for TV Christmas movie in 1992. It was a remake of A Connecticut Christmas or Christmas in Connecticut, an old
Really?
film that was remade for TV that Arnold Schwarzenegger directed. And there's a great podcast episode detailing the craziness behind just the fact that that movie even got made. So, since you're a big Christmas movie fan, you should check that out because it's really great.
I definitely will. I've never
Um,
even heard that.
yeah, I hadn't heard that story either. And like I said, I'm a sucker for those types of stories. Um, so just from my own curiosity, business side of things with Enchanted Valley Productions, how does that team decide what films they're going to greenlight, because as you said, so many of them are self-financed.
Okay, so we basically decide on, what actors are available because there's, up in Colorado, they have basically an already set group of actors and crew members. So they decide, which movies this particular actress is going to be in. Um, and it also depends on which scripts are completely ready. So right now we have 6 more scripts that are completely ready, and we just have to decide which ones we want to film this year. If we find enough investors, then we'll probably do all 6. We have one that we are workshopping with Hallmark. We have one that we are trying to get an investor so that we can film with a really, really good aging musician. And she lives up there in Colorado, and we really want to film with her at this lodge. So the owners of this lodge are kind of on the fence. So that's one that we're waiting on. So some of these we have to have specific locations for as well. So some of them won't get made because we don't have the location yet. If we can't find a location, then we just have to pivot.
I remember when I was doing my short film Big and Tall, we were
Mhm.
waiting for we had some time because we
Mhm.
needed the sun to go down,
Yep.
to have more of a dusk shot.
Yep.
And it was going to be a scene where our main character is finally vindicated for all of her efforts and her belief in Bigfoot.
Mhm.
And her brother, who had made fun of her earlier in the film, was going to get his comeuppance, let's say. Well, my actor who played the brother, we were there waiting on location. Uh, we got a call from him. He had to go to the ER because he sliced his finger open at work because he worked in the kitchen at a restaurant.
Oh, no.
And so, yeah, so talking about pivoting,
Yeah.
we had to rewrite the scene, right there on the
On the
spot.
sea.
Yeah. We so that's where your team of collaborators come in. So I sat down with the the actor who played the main character, sat down with the DP. We just all kind of huddled up and said, "Here's what we think," and we kind of just hammered out this script. But then I pivoted again once I got it into post, and
Mhm.
it wasn't working. So I basically rewrote the scene again
Oh,
and
wow.
was able to ADR really the entire final scene.
Oof.
Thankfully, and the reason I was able to do that is because the final scene is basically a one take look through the
Mhm.
window of a house with our main character at the window looking out, and you hear her mom come in, but you never really see her mom talk.
Mhm.
And so that was how we were able to completely ADR the scene because the mom was off camera, but I was able to write new lines for her that made better that were a little funnier, that made more sense for the story, that
Yeah.
it was better than what we could come up with on the fly. But yeah, so I know what you're talking about in terms of things not working out quite right and having to quickly shift gears. What are some things that you have observed from your own writing or your own experiences in producing that you have really wanted to get better at, and that you found that maybe I've improved some in this area, but some things maybe you've learned along the way in doing these now 5 Christmas films with more to come?
So I'm constantly learning. There are always things that I wanna change. In my writing, I wanna be more funny. I wanna be able to show more emotion. I want my actors to be able to really connect with their characters. And it's always my fear that I'm going to write a scene and the actors just won't get it. As a writer, you want your actors to make sure they're comfortable with your words as you write them in your script. Now, I don't mind if my actors move around the words, change up some of the words, but I kind of want you to stick to the script. I mean, every writer does. Be like, don't mess it up too much. So I had one experience where an actor decided that he wanted to add monologue. And I was like, you know what? Fine. Just do it. We can always cut it out later. Well, he gets in his monologue and then he asks for a line. And we all look around. We're like, we don't have the line. He's like, I need my line. I'm like, I don't have your line. I was like, you wrote this. I don't have it. And so then he started over from the very beginning again, like 2 or 3 times so that he could get his monologue right. But it was so frustrating to have someone decide that they needed to rewrite your words or add to your words when it wasn't really needed.
So yeah, so it's a lesson learned in knowing what hills to die on and knowing when to pick your battles and stuff.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
because if we had told that actor that he couldn't do it or, made him feel bad in any way, then he would have given us a bad performance the rest of the movie for all of the other scenes that he would have been in, and
Yeah.
that's not something that we want. So you're right, it's finding the battles that you need to fight, not that you want to fight, like, because you wanna fight all of them because you want things your way as the director, as the producer.
Yeah.
You want things your way. But you have to know that these actors need a little bit of space to breathe.
So the biggest question of the podcast episode is how many more Christmas puns do you think you can come up with?
You mean like Christmas titles?
Yes.
We have a list of 30
Wow, okay.
that we haven't even used yet.
Oh yeah, you're cranking them out. So I never want to end an episode without giving my guest a chance to plug whatever he or she want to plug. So tell everyone, where can they find you online? What are you working on next? How can they find you and support you?
Okay. So if you are interested in knowing more about our films and our companies, we are under Chestnut Tree Films and also Enchanted Valley Productions. You can just go to our websites and you can, both those are 2 separate websites actually. So you can go to either one. So Chestnut Tree Films, we are currently working on, like I said, a thriller and a horror movie. And then we have, of course, the Christmas movies, which are all going to be filmed up in Colorado under Enchanted Valley Productions. So we are very excited. We're always looking for investors.
Yes, are we all?
We are all looking for investors. And actually, when we went to the American film market this last year, they told us that minimum guarantees are going the way of a dinosaur.
Mhm.
So it's more frustrating right now. The way to go is to see if you can get film incentives. And those are a lot of the reasons why distributors are choosing certain films to go with, and some investors as well, because investors do like film incentives.
Kate, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate your time and all of your stories and insights, and wish you nothing but the best for all your future projects.
Thank you so much, and same to you, and congratulations on your wins with your most recent film.
Thank you very much. It was a good weekend. And that was my conversation with Kate DeSessions. I really appreciate her time and hope you enjoyed that episode. As always, you can connect with me, see everything that I'm doing online at linktree.com/Clint Till. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you get podcasts. Share the show with others. Really will help us out here. One note, at the very end of the episode, Kate talked about a film project that I had been working on, and that's my latest short film, That's My House. And at the time of the recording, we had just earned 2 awards at the Magnolia Film Festival, so we were super excited about that. You can keep up with that project at clinttill.net/myhousefilm. Right now, it's on the festival circuit, and hopefully it will be coming to a festival near you, and you can check it out. Thank you so much for listening. This has been the Persistence of Vision podcast.